small decisions we make every single day are writing the story of our tomorrow. Right now, in this very moment, someone somewhere is taking their last breath, leaving behind a lifetime of dreams unrealized. Another person is celebrating their greatest achievement, standing atop a mountain they once thought impossible to climb. What separates these two destinies? Action. Pure and simple action. Life has a peculiar way of teaching us its most valuable lessons. Have you ever watched a child learn to walk? They don't attend seminars on bipedal movement. They don't read books about proper foot placement. They simply try, fall, get up, and try again. That child, in their purest form, demonstrates the fundamental truth about success. It requires action, regardless of the fear of falling. But here we sit, sophisticated adults often paralyzed by the very thing that never stopped us as children, the fear of failure. We've learned to hesitate. We've mastered the art of waiting for the perfect moment. We've become experts at planning to plan. And in doing so, we've forgotten the simple wisdom that once guided us. Action precedes results. Consider the farmer who inherited a plot of barren land. Two paths lay before him. The first path was to study soil composition, analyze weather patterns, research crop rotation, and perfect his farming strategy. The second path was to begin working the soil immediately, learning and adjusting as he went along. The first farmer is still studying, still planning, still waiting for the perfect moment. The second farmer has already experienced several harvests, some bountiful, some meager, but each one teaching invaluable lessons that no book could provide. What's truly fascinating is how we rationalize our inaction. We dress it up in sophisticated terms. We call it strategic planning or due diligence. And while these things have their place, they too often become elaborate excuses for avoiding the essential step, beginning. Think about the number of times you've said, "I'll start when the weather is better, when I have more money, when I have more time, when I feel more confident, when I'm better prepared." But here's the brutal truth that we all need to face. Waiting for these perfect conditions is like waiting for all the traffic lights to be green before starting your journey. It's an impossible condition that guarantees only one thing: you'll never leave your driveway. Look around this room. Every single person here has a dream, a goal, an ambition that they've been nurturing in the quiet corners of their mind. Some of you have carried these dreams for so long they've become heavy with the weight of time and regret. You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? That dream that makes your heart race a little faster when you think about it. That goal that you know deep down you're capable of achieving. Why haven't you started? Really ask yourself that question right now. Not the surface answer, not the convenient excuse, but the real, honest reason. Is it fear? Fear of what others might think. Fear of discovering that you might not be as talented as you hope. Fear of success and the responsibilities it might bring. Let me share a truth that might shake you to your core. That fear you're feeling, it's not a warning sign to stop. It's a signal that you're standing on the edge of opportunity. Every great achievement in human history was accomplished by someone who felt fear, but acted anyway. The first person who thought they could preserve food by canning it. They weren't certain it would work. They faced skepticism, probably even ridicule, but they acted. Think about the first person who believed they could create a flying machine. They didn't have all the answers. They didn't have a guarantee of success, but they acted. You might be thinking, but those were exceptional people. Were they? Or were they simply ordinary people who understood one fundamental truth? The future belongs to those who act. They were people who grasped that all the potential in the world means nothing without the courage to take that first step. Potential for a moment. Potential is like having a ticket to a grand performance. It's valuable, yes, but utterly worthless if you never show up to claim your seat. How many people do you know who are full of potential? It's often said as a compliment, but think about it. Isn't unfulfilled potential one of life's greatest tragedies? The room you're sitting in right now is full of potential energy. Ideas, dreams, and capabilities that could change lives, transform communities, maybe even alter the course of history. But potential energy, by its very nature, is static. It needs to be converted into kinetic energy, the energy of movement, of action, to have any real impact on the world. This brings us to a crucial question. What makes some people take action, while others remain forever in the planning stage? The answer might surprise you. It's not talent. It's not intelligence. It's not even opportunity. It's the simple understanding that imperfect action trumps perfect inaction every single time. Consider two people with the same goal of helping their community. One spends months creating the perfect plan, considering every variable, trying to account for every possible obstacle. The other starts small, perhaps by helping one person, then another, learning and adjusting as they go. After 6 months, who do you think has made a real difference? Who has gained valuable experience? Who has built momentum? Momentum, there's a word worth exploring. In physics, momentum is mass in motion. In life, it's the same principle. The hardest part of any journey is getting started, overcoming that initial inertia. But once you're in motion, each action becomes easier than the last. Each step forward creates energy for the next step. Have you ever noticed how successful people seem to have an easier time achieving new goals? It's not because they're more talented or luckier than others. It's because they've developed the habit of action. They've learned that the best way to predict the future is to create it. And creation requires movement, requires doing, requires action. But let me be clear about something. When I talk about action, I'm not talking about blind activity. I'm not suggesting you throw yourself into every opportunity that presents itself. What I am advocating for is purposeful action, movement with direction, guided by your goals and values. Think of it like a ship leaving port. The captain doesn't need to see the entire journey ahead. They don't need perfect weather forecasts for every day of their voyage. They need to know their destination, and they need to start moving in that direction. Course corrections can be made along the way. Storms can be navigated as they arise. But none of that becomes relevant until the ship leaves the harbor. Your future is that ship. It's loaded with cargo, your dreams, your abilities, your potential. But until you leave the safe harbor of planning and preparation, until you raise those sails and start moving, you'll never discover what treasures await you on distant shores. There's a story that perfectly illustrates the price we pay for inaction. In a small town, there lived a man who spent 30 years working at a job he despised. Every morning he would say to himself, "One day I'll start my own business." Every evening he would return home and sketch out plans for his dream. He had notebooks filled with ideas, strategies, and calculations. He knew his industry inside and out. He had watched others, perhaps less qualified than himself, take the leap and succeed. Yet he remained where he was, telling himself that he needed just a little more preparation, just a little more security, just a little more confidence. And then one day, he had an unexpected conversation with an elderly craftsman who lived down the street. This craftsman had built a thriving business with nothing but skill in his hands and determination in his heart. When the man shared his dreams and his fears, the craftsman asked him a simple question. If not now, then when? And if when finally comes, will you still be able? That question holds within it a profound truth about the nature of opportunity and time. You see, opportunities don't age well. They're like fresh fruit, sweet and ripe for a moment, then slowly deteriorating until they're gone completely. Your energy, your enthusiasm, your ability to bounce back from failure, these too have a shelf life. Let me ask you something. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? Hold that thought in your mind for a moment. Really see it. Feel it. Now here's the more important question. What's the worst that could happen if you tried and failed? Would the world stop turning? Would the ground open up and swallow you whole? Or would you simply join the ranks of every successful person who ever lived, all of whom failed numerous times on their path to achievement? The real tragedy in life isn't failing, it's failing to try. It's standing at the edge of opportunity and choosing to walk away. It's dying with your music still inside you, as one wise soul once said. Think about that phrase for a moment. Dying with your music still inside you. What's your music? What's the song that only you can sing? The contribution that only you can make? We often talk about leaving a legacy, but legacy isn't something that happens at the end of your life. Legacy is built in moments of choice, those countless instances where you either step forward into growth or back into safety. Every time you choose action over hesitation, you're building your legacy. Every time you choose courage over comfort, you're writing your story. Consider the master sculptor working with a block of marble. Before the first strike of the chisel, that block contains infinite possibilities. But those possibilities mean nothing until the sculptor takes action. With each strike, possibilities are both eliminated and created. The sculpture emerges not from the perfect plan, but from the interaction between vision and action. Your life is that block of marble. Every day you don't take action is a day when the sculpture of your future remains locked inside the stone. Every day you choose inaction is a day when your dreams remain in the realm of possibility rather than reality. But here's what's fascinating about action. It has a clarifying effect. It's like turning on the lights in a dark room. You might think you know what's in the room, but until you flip that switch, you're just guessing. Action illuminates reality. It shows you what works and what doesn't. It reveals opportunities you couldn't see before. It creates possibilities that didn't exist until you started moving. Learning to ride a bicycle. You can study the physics of balance, understand the mechanics of pedaling, and watch others ride for years. But the only way to actually learn is to get on the bike and start pedaling. Will you wobble? Absolutely. Might you fall? Probably. But here's the key. The wobbling and falling are not failures. They're essential parts of the learning process. The same principle applies to every worthwhile endeavor in life. You don't learn to lead by reading about leadership. You learn by leading. You don't become confident by waiting for confidence to arrive. You become confident by taking action despite your fears. You don't build a successful business by perpetually planning. You build it by starting, learning, adjusting, and persisting. Let me share another fundamental truth about action. It has a compound effect. Just as money in a bank account earns interest, actions taken today create opportunities tomorrow. Each step forward puts you in a position to see new possibilities, meet new people, develop new skills. But here's the catch. This compound effect works in both directions. Inaction also compounds. Each day of delay not only costs you the opportunities of that day, but also the compound effects that would have flowed from taking action. A garden. If you plant a seed today, it doesn't sprout tomorrow. It might take days or weeks to see the first green shoot break through the soil. But if you never plant the seed, you've lost not only the plant that would have grown, but all the seeds that plant would have produced, and all the plants those seeds would have become. Your actions, or inactions, today are the seeds of your future. This brings us to another crucial point about action. It requires courage, yes, but not as much as you might think. You don't need to be fearless to take action. You just need to be willing to act despite your fears. And here's something remarkable about fear. It diminishes with familiarity. The first time you do something frightening, your heart pounds and your hands shake. The 10th time, it's challenging but manageable. The 100th time, it's routine. But you never get to the 100th time without going through the first time. You never develop competence without going through incompetence. You never achieve success without risking failure. This is why action is so crucial. It's the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Consider the ancient art of alchemy. Those early scientists spent centuries trying to turn lead into gold. They failed in their literal quest, but they succeeded in discovering numerous scientific principles that advanced human knowledge. Their actions, though directed at an impossible goal, produced valuable results. This teaches us another vital lesson about action. Even imperfect action in the wrong direction often yields better results than perfect inaction. Right now in this room there are dreams waiting to be born. There are businesses waiting to be started. There are books waiting to be written. There are lives waiting to be changed. But dreams without action are merely wishes. They're like clouds in the sky, beautiful to look at but insubstantial, easily dispersed by the winds of time. The question facing each of us is not, what do I want to achieve? The real question is, what am I willing to do about it? What actions am I willing to take today? Not tomorrow, not next week, not when conditions are perfect, but today. What steps am I prepared to take, knowing they might lead to failure, knowing they might expose my inadequacies, knowing they might force me to grow in uncomfortable ways? Have you ever noticed how time seems to move at different speeds? When we're engaged in meaningful action, pursuing our dreams, building something worthwhile, time flows like a river, swift and purposeful. But when we're stuck in inaction, trapped in the quicksand of procrastination, time becomes a slow drip of regret, each moment heavy with the weight of unused potential. There's a deeper truth here that we need to confront. Time is the only truly non-renewable resource we possess. You can lose money and earn it back. You can lose friends and make new ones. You can lose your way and find it again. But time? Once it's gone forever. Each moment that passes is a moment you'll never get back. Yet how do we treat this precious resource? We spend it as though we have an infinite supply. We waste it in the waiting room of life, telling ourselves stories about why now isn't the right time to start. We squander it in the pursuit of perfect conditions that never arrive. We let it slip away while we gather more information, more preparation, more certainty. Let me share with you a profound lesson learned from master craftsmen who spent decades perfecting their art. These artisans understood something vital about action and perfection. They knew that perfection isn't a starting point, it's a direction. You don't begin with perfection. You move toward it through consistent, dedicated action. A master carpenter crafting a fine piece of furniture. The first piece they ever made wasn't their masterpiece. But here's the crucial point. They made it anyway. They didn't wait until they could make something perfect. They started where they were, with the skills they had, and improved through action. Each piece they created taught them something new. Each mistake showed them a better way. Each success built their confidence for the next challenge. This principle applies to every area of life. You don't become a great parent by reading every parenting book ever written. You become a great parent by parenting, by being there, by making mistakes and learning from them. You don't become a great leader by memorizing leadership theories. You become a great leader by leading, by making decisions, by taking responsibility for the results. Consider the art of public speaking. The greatest orators in history didn't start out delivering masterful speeches to thousands. They started by standing up in front of small groups, their hands shaking, their voices trembling. But they took action. They spoke. And through that action they discovered their voice, developed their style, and built their confidence. This brings us to another crucial aspect of action. It creates momentum. When you're stationary, getting started requires enormous energy. But once you're in motion, maintaining and directing that motion becomes easier. It's like pushing a heavy boulder. The hardest part is getting it to move that first inch. Once it's rolling, you can guide its direction with much less effort. But here's what's fascinating about momentum. It works in both directions. Just as positive action creates positive momentum, inaction creates negative momentum. Each time you choose not to act, each time you postpone your dreams, each time you settle for less than what you're capable of, you're creating momentum towards stagnation and regret. The last time you postponed an important decision or action, what reasons did you give yourself? Were they real reasons or merely excuses dressed up as reasons? Did waiting make the decision easier or harder? Did postponement bring clarity or just more uncertainty? The truth is, clarity comes through action. Direction comes through movement. Certainty comes through experience. You can't steer a parked car. You can't navigate a stationary ship. You can't find your path without taking steps. Action is the catalyst that transforms dreams into reality, ideas into achievements, potential into results, something that often paralyzes people into inaction, the fear of making the wrong choice. We sometimes believe that by not choosing, by not acting, we're keeping all our options open. But this is an illusion. Not choosing is itself a choice. Not acting is itself an action, one that usually leads to the very outcomes we're trying to avoid. Consider the story of two young people with similar dreams of becoming writers. One spent years perfecting their first novel in private, endlessly revising, waiting for it to be perfect before showing it to anyone. The other wrote stories and shared them, submitted to magazines, joined writing groups, faced rejection, and kept writing. After 5 years, who do you think was closer to their dream? Who had learned more? Who had grown more? Who had actually become a writer? The answer is clear, isn't it? The one who took action became a writer, not because they were more talented, but because they understood a fundamental truth. You become what you do, not what you plan to do. You are defined by your actions, not your intentions. This brings us to another vital truth about action. It's the greatest teacher. You can read about swimming, watch videos about swimming, listen to lectures about swimming, but you only truly learn to swim by getting in the water. Experience is not the best teacher. It's the only teacher when it comes to real, lasting learning. Learning a new language. You can study grammar rules and memorize vocabulary lists for years, but real fluency only comes through practice, through speaking, making mistakes, adjusting, and speaking again. The person who speaks broken French for 6 months will learn more than the person who studies perfect French for 6 years without speaking. The same principle applies to every skill, every goal, every dream. You learn to run a business by running a business. You learn to manage people by managing people. You learn to overcome fear by facing fear. There is no substitute for direct experience, and direct experience only comes through action. But here's something crucial to understand about action. It doesn't have to be perfect, complete, or even successful to be valuable. Every action, regardless of its outcome, teaches us something. Every attempt, whether it succeeds or fails, moves us forward in some way. Every step, even if it's in the wrong direction, gives us information we didn't have before. Scientists working in a laboratory, they don't expect every experiment to succeed. In fact, they learn as much, sometimes more, from failed experiments as they do from successful ones. Each failure eliminates one possibility and points toward others. Each mistake contains within it the seeds of new understanding. This is why waiting for perfect conditions, perfect knowledge, or perfect ability is such a dangerous trap. Perfection is not a prerequisite for action. It's a potential result of sustained action over time. The path to excellence is paved with imperfect attempts, corrected mistakes, and lessons learned through experience. There's something profoundly powerful about the moment of decision. That instant when you stop preparing to live and start actually living. When you cease planning to do and start doing. When you transform from a dreamer into a doer. That moment changes everything. It's like opening a door that you've been standing in front of for years, finally discovering what's on the other side. But here's what's fascinating about these moments of decision. They often appear insignificant at the time. The actions that change our lives rarely announce themselves with fanfare. They usually come disguised as small choices, tiny steps, seemingly inconsequential decisions. It's only in retrospect that we recognize their true importance. Consider the master violinist who has performed in the world's greatest concert halls. When did their journey really begin? Was it with their first public performance, their first lesson? No. It began with a simple decision, the decision to pick up the violin for the first time, to make that first awkward attempt at drawing the bow across the strings. Everything that followed, every achievement, every standing ovation, every moment of artistic triumph, stemmed from that one simple action. This is the power of initiating action. It's like dropping a pebble into a still pond. The initial splash might seem small, but the ripples extend far beyond our ability to see or predict. Each action we take creates ripples of consequence that affect not only our own lives, but the lives of others in ways we can never fully anticipate. But let's confront something that often holds us back. The myth of readiness. We tell ourselves we'll start when we're ready, but what does ready really mean? If we're honest with ourselves, we'll admit that ready is often just another word for comfortable. And comfort, while pleasant, is often the enemy of growth. The caterpillar entering its chrysalis. Does it wait until it feels ready to transform? Does it wait until it's certain about the process? No. It acts according to its nature, embracing a transformation that will completely dissolve its current form before rebuilding it into something new. The caterpillar teaches us that sometimes we have to be willing to dissolve what we are to become what we can be. This brings us to another crucial truth about action. It requires faith. Not religious faith necessarily, but faith in the process of growth and change. Faith that taking steps into the unknown, while frightening, is ultimately how we discover our true capabilities. Faith that the discomfort of action is preferable to the comfort of stagnation. Consider the master baker working with dough. They know that the process of kneading, of working the dough with their hands, creates the gluten structures necessary for good bread. But here's what's fascinating. You can't see these structures forming. You have to trust the process. You have to believe that your actions, though their effects are not immediately visible, are creating something valuable. Your life is like that dough. Every action you take is kneading your future into shape. You may not see the immediate results of each action, but every step, every decision, every moment of effort is creating structures of opportunity and capability that will support your future success. But here's something we need to understand about action. It's not just about doing more. It's about doing what matters. Purposeful action aligned with your values and goals is infinitely more valuable than random activity. Think about a garden again. Yanking randomly at plants isn't gardening, it's chaos. True gardening requires understanding, purpose, and focused action. This brings us to the concept of decisive action. Have you noticed how some people seem to move through life with purpose and direction, while others appear to drift? The difference often lies not in their circumstances or capabilities, but in their willingness to make clear decisions and take decisive action. Water in 3 different states: vapor, liquid, and ice. Vapor disperses, filling whatever space it's in. Liquid flows, taking the path of least resistance, but ice can be shaped, it can be carved, it can be built into structures. Your actions are like that. The more focused and decisive they are, the more shape and structure they give to your life. But what about failure? What about mistakes? What about the very real possibility that our actions might not lead to the results we want? These are valid concerns, but they contain within them a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of success and failure. Success is not the absence of failure. It's the product of failure properly understood and used. Every master was once a disaster. Every expert was once a beginner. Every success story contains within it 1,000 small failures, each one providing crucial lessons that contributed to the final triumph. Consider the master chef. Do you think their first soufflé was perfect? Their first sauce properly seasoned? Their first presentation worthy of a fine restaurant? Of course not. But each attempt, each failure, each less than perfect result taught them something valuable. They didn't wait until they could cook perfectly to start cooking. They cooked to learn how to cook perfectly. This brings us to another vital truth about action. It creates feedback. Without action, all our plans, all our theories, all our expectations remain untested. They exist in a vacuum, safe from reality, but also safe from improvement. Action puts our ideas into the real world where they can be tested, refined, and improved. Learning to dance. You can watch dancing, study dancing, think about dancing all you want. But until you actually step onto the dance floor and move, you're not really learning to dance. And yes, your first steps might be awkward. Yes, you might step on some toes. Yes, you might feel foolish, but with each attempt, with each mistake, with each correction, you're getting better. The same principle applies to every area of life. You learn to negotiate by negotiating. You learn to sell by selling. You learn to lead by leading. There is no substitute for direct experience, and direct experience only comes through action. But here's what's remarkable about action. It has a cumulative effect. Each action you take not only moves you closer to your goals, but also makes the next action easier. Each step forward not only covers distance, but also builds strength for future steps. Each decision not only resolves the current situation, but also builds confidence for future decisions. Think of the master shipbuilder in a coastal town. Each morning they wake before dawn and head to their workshop. They don't question whether they feel inspired that day. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They simply begin. They take action. They know that each small step, each plank shaped, each joint fitted, each nail driven, brings them closer to creating something magnificent. But here's what's fascinating about the shipbuilder's work. The ship takes shape so gradually that on any given day, the progress might seem minimal. Yet over time, through consistent action, something remarkable emerges. A vessel capable of crossing oceans, weathering storms, carrying precious cargo to distant shores. Your life is that ship. Your actions are the craftsmanship that determines its seaworthiness. Each decision you make, each step you take, each moment you choose growth over comfort, these are the building blocks of your future. And just like the shipbuilder, you can't wait for perfect conditions. The time to begin is now. Consider the profound truth hidden in the simple act of walking. When you walk, you're essentially falling forward with each step. For a brief moment, you're off balance, committing yourself to movement before your foot finds solid ground again. This is the perfect metaphor for progress in life. Growth requires that we be willing to fall forward, to embrace moments of imbalance, to trust that our next step will find firm footing. But some of you might be thinking, you don't understand. I've tried before and failed. I've taken action and been disappointed. I've reached for my dreams and fallen short. Yes, you have. And in those experiences lies your greatest advantage. Because failure isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. Disappointment isn't your burden, it's your guide. Every setback you've experienced has equipped you with wisdom that no success could have taught you. The master potter working with clay. When a piece doesn't turn out as intended, they don't discard the clay. They reshape it. They begin again, their hands now knowing something they didn't know before. The clay isn't ruined by the failed attempt. It's enriched by it. Your past failures haven't ruined your future possibilities. They've enriched your understanding of what's possible. This brings us to a fundamental truth about action and time. The best time to have started was yesterday. The second best time is now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when conditions are perfect. Now. Because now is the only time we ever really have. The future exists only as potential until we take action in the present to create it. The master painter facing a blank canvas. They don't wait for inspiration to descend like a bolt from the blue. They begin. They make that first brush stroke. They take action. And through that action, inspiration finds them. Through that movement, creativity flows. Through that beginning, possibilities emerge that couldn't have been seen before the first step was taken. Your life is that blank canvas. Your actions are the brush strokes that create the masterpiece. But here's the crucial point. The canvas doesn't care about your past attempts. It doesn't judge your previous failures. It doesn't know about your fears or doubts or uncertainties. It simply waits for your next action, something that often holds people back, the fear of commitment. When we take action, we're committing ourselves to a direction. We're saying no to other possibilities. This can feel frightening. But consider this, by not choosing, by not acting, we're actually making the most dangerous commitment of all, a commitment to stagnation, to the status quo, to watching life pass us by. The master chess player understands that not moving is still a move, not choosing is still a choice, not acting is still an action. It's just an action that leaves all the power in the hands of circumstance rather than in our own hands. This brings us to another vital truth about action. It creates clarity. Have you ever noticed how problems that seem overwhelming when you're standing still often become manageable once you start moving? How challenges that appear insurmountable when you're planning often become navigable when you're doing. This is because action has a clarifying effect. It cuts through confusion. It dissolves paralysis. It transforms the abstract into the concrete, the difference between looking at a mountain from a distance and actually climbing it. From a distance, the mountain appears as one massive, perhaps overwhelming challenge. But when you're actually climbing, you're never dealing with the whole mountain at once. You're dealing with the next step, the next handhold, the next moment of effort. This is how action breaks down even the most daunting challenges into manageable pieces. Your future is that mountain. Your dreams are at the summit. And the only way to reach them is through action, not sometime, not eventually, but now. One step at a time. One decision at a time. One moment of courage at a time. Because here's the ultimate truth about action. It's the bridge between who you are and who you can become. It's the transformation point between potential and achievement. It's the moment when dreams become reality, when thoughts become things, when possibilities become actualities. The master musician knows that music exists in the realm of action. You can read about music, think about music, dream about music all you want. But music only comes alive through the doing. Through fingers on strings, breath through reed, bow across violin. Your life is that music. It exists as potential until you take action to release it into the world. Right now in this moment, you stand at a crossroads. Before you lies a choice, not between success and failure, but between action and inaction. Between movement and stagnation. Between growth and comfort. This choice exists not just today, but every day, every hour, every moment. The future is not some distant shore that we'll eventually reach if we wait long enough. The future is being created right now, in this moment, through our actions or our inaction, through our decisions or our indecision, through our courage or our fear. Your future needs action, not perfect action, not complete action, not guaranteed to succeed action, just action, real, imperfect, courageous action. Because in the end, it's not the actions we take that we regret most. It's the actions we didn't take, the chances we didn't seize, the dreams we didn't pursue. The master of any craft will tell you that mastery isn't a destination. It's a commitment to constant action, to continuous growth, to endless learning. Your life is your craft. Your future is your masterpiece, and it's waiting for you to take action. So let me ask you one final time. What action will you take today? What step, however small, will you make toward your dreams? What movement, however humble, will you initiate toward your goals? Because your future is not waiting for perfect conditions. It's not waiting for complete certainty. It's not waiting for absolute confidence. Your future is waiting for you to act. And the time for action is now.